Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing okay. You're not going to be doing fantastically well. Of course, you're not. Leeds have lost. But I hope you're doing well anyway. Full time with Connor here. We've seen some interesting results today. We've seen some good results for Leeds in a sense. Obviously, Sunderland losing 3-2 to Plymouth Argyle. Bad result, really bad result for Regis Labrise. Obviously, Wayne Rooney getting a really good win, of which Sunderland were winning that game. We've seen Sheffield United win quite convincingly last night against Hull City, of which formerly were beaten by Leeds United, of course. West Bromwich Albion are yet to play. And Burnley, of course, have got that critical win against Leeds United at Ellen Road, of which, we potentially will be looking back at some stage of the season and thinking, that was a big loss. It felt like a very promotion-y win for Burnley. And look, we're bloody five games into the season. We have to be real. We have to, analyze this with a sense of logic. And I can understand the shouts. Is this knee jerk, as Timmy Leeds says? You are wrong, Connor, about Daniel Farke. So essentially says Phil Anderson. I completely understand that. I completely get that there's a different rhetoric with this result. I have my worries, my big time worries with this manager, which I have sort of stayed constant with for a long time now, a long time. However, what I will say is it's very, very early on in this season, and I'm not just going to flip flop on what I was saying earlier on, but I'm here to give the opposing side as well. I'm here to say, Leeds could go on a winning run right now that could see us bloody win the league. That's what can happen right now. However, I want to err on the side of caution when it comes to just batting away any sort of criticism for this manager. Unfortunately, I've seen already online and, on your forums that everyone is an idiot. Everyone is an irrational fan. Everybody is not giving this season enough chance to get going, who dares to criticise Daniel Farke. I've never understood this with fans. I don't really have an affiliation and an affinity with any manager that I've ever had in my life, apart from Marcelo Bielsa, because he brought the good times back to Ellen Road. But even that got to a point of which I was saying, look, Marcelo, at that point, it was probably time to go in terms of results and what we could have got in terms of the next man that came in and would have been a seamless transition from Marcelo Bielsa. We all wanted that to end in a very lovely way. It didn't do so. It was chaos, and that was an absolute shit show in itself. But listen, that's the only manager I've ever had a real affinity with, Simon Grayson to a certain extent, but I've never understood this sentiment which is just drawn into the manager. And I think it lies into, and it sort of seeps into almost just turning around and saying for any single point, you can't criticise him because he's Leeds United manager. And there's a personal offence to actually going out there and looking at what has been done and what hasn't been done, looking at the facts and then making a judgment. And I think as a football fan, you should be able to do that. You are a paying customer. And I found it interesting post the game. I had a quick look at Graham's post-match thoughts. And obviously, guys, you can watch, you can go on my post-match thoughts. We have an article out there now, www.oneleeds.com. You can check that out if you're interested in your bonus bits as well. There's loads of stuff over on One Leeds. I definitely suggest that you all do that. Also, we are sponsored by IPMgroup.com. Everybody, what that is it's CCTV surveillance and security in the Leeds area, supplied by my mate Rick, and it's well worth it, everybody. It's a fantastic business, of which they're based in the Leeds United area. If you want to get in touch with those guys as well, links in the description for Rick and the gang, who's a sponsor of One Leeds this season. But yeah, I think you should be able to criticise the manager, and I think it's a bad state of affairs in football if you can't criticise the manager. And what I will say as well is, if you do look at the back end of last season, which we've got to do, I've seen certain individuals saying you can't take that narrative of looking at last season. Well, of course you have got to do that. Like, why would you not do that? That's nonsense. Of course you've got to look at last season and the results, which put us into a point of which we barely got any points in our last 10 games. We were in one of the lowest form points in the division. Teams, at the bottom half of the table were taking points off us. It wasn't a good affair, and we were going into a lot of games thinking, are we going to even pick up a point here? It got to that stage with Leeds United, and the blame had to be put on the manager at that point because he was struggling to devise a game plan of which to beat certain sides which were coming up against Leeds United with just the same sort of game plan every single time. Now, what I will say as well is that's fed into this season. Of course it is, but you can look at this season. You can say, do you know what? It's been 1 loss in 5. Leeds United, have done okay so far. The only real outlier has been getting absolutely piped by Middlesbrough. But there's also another way of looking at this. There is another way of looking at it, as it has been 4 wins in 14, which is big. It's a big sort of sector to look at. You look at the 1 win in 5, the 1 loss in 5 as well, and you look at the teams that we've played. And I'm just going to show this to you guys, of which, might be quite interesting to you. It might not be. That's just Graham's comment, of which we are going to get into in a little bit. I'm going to share the wrong screen there. Hold on a sec. So this is the championship table. Sorry if my face is a little bit blurry, everybody. I'm just going to lean back. It's on autofocus. So Cardiff City, obviously the team that we're playing next week. But when you're looking at the form right now, Leeds have had not a bad start, really, have they, when you look at it? Not a bad start. Hull City in 23rd. Portsmouth in 22nd. Sheffield Wednesday in 20th. And then you go a little bit further up here, obviously, and you go West Bromwich Albion and Burnley. So the 5 games that we've played so far, we've had 2 in the top 6, which we've got a point. And then we've got 3 in the bottom 5 there. So personally, I think on a rational level, it's very cool, calm, and collected, and we can all be sat here with our shoulders back. We're emotional after the game, of course we are. But the point remains: is it good enough? Is it good enough right now? Am I coming on here and calling for Daniel Farke to be sacked here on full time? Absolutely not. I am not in a position right now to be able to call for that, because I don't know who would come in. But what I can see is an ownership structure there at Ellen Road today, of which they've probably seen something that they've seen before. They've seen a manager who is struggling, in my opinion, to adapt outside the X factor. They're seeing a manager who struggles a little bit overall when you look at a general sphere of X amount of games, to really get his substitutions right. And you've got to involve last season, because Daniel Farke's struggles, of which have kind of come into this season a little bit, have effectively, when you look at the average, he's kind of struggled overall to get the substitutions right. Today was a calamity, an absolute calamity when it came to substitutions, by which the end we had Elia Gruev at centre-back. We had 2 right-backs on the pitch in the same position. Nonso was on the right, then he was central, then he was on the left. It looked like that was all by his own admission. And Joel Peru looked like he was playing wide right. It was just chaos. The shape, it looked desperate. There was no, in my opinion, real pace from the start of the game. There was no real explosiveness. Leeds had opportunities, but I think we've really got to look at exactly what the finite point is here. And many people will say, "Well, Connor, we missed 2 big chances, 2 big chances in the game." Matteo Joseph clean through, should have scored. So we've got to look at the players here as well. This is the balance of the argument. The players, Joseph had to score. I'm a Joseph lover. I think he's a fantastic player, and he'll be good for us this year. But he's got to score. Willie Gnonto has to score. But what I will say, everybody, and what a lot of people are missing as well, is in that 3-1-6 build-up, we were getting absolutely hammered on the transition throughout that first half. They were hitting us every single time. And there might not have been something at the end of it every single time, but that low block and them forcing Leeds United inside, and Leeds playing into that and not really getting out wide and playing those balls in, which should have been a marker from the start of the game. Let's go out wide. Let's really utilize our pace and whip those balls in for Matteo Joseph, of which he had a massive advantage in the last game against Hull when he scored the first goal. Let's do that. Let's play on that. We didn't do that. There was an evident instruction for Leeds to invert and get more central, but Burnley packed out that space. And by packing out that space, which we've seen last season, haven't we? Come on. We've seen that last season. Inverting that space, when an opposition team compacts in that space as well, that central space, they then just keep 2 or 3 players up top. And that's exactly what they did with Cole Osho and Jaden Anthony and Zian Fleming moving forward as well. Now, let's bear in mind as well today, everybody, they didn't have Lyle Foster. They didn't have Bayer at the back. They didn't have Manuel Benson coming off the bench. These are players in that artillery which would have definitely enhanced that Burnley side. And obviously, Dan James would have helped Leeds United 100%. I think we actually missed his pace. Leeds didn't have much pace going forward today. Manor Solomon, I think, is a tricky, low centre of gravity, well-balanced, very good at this level player, 100%. Is he explosively quick, like a Crescencio Somerville, like a Dan James? No, he's not. Like a Cole show, who I couldn't believe how quick he was today. No. So in that front three today, you didn't have a lot of actual explosiveness. Quick. I don't believe Nonto is of that ilk as much as maybe a Crysencio Somerville. Personally, I think Crysencio Somerville's agility off a 5 to 8 yard mark was sensational with a low center of gravity as well. I think Nonto does have that, but he's just not as quick as Crysencio Somerville over a short distance. However, I do think Nonto has that element to his game, just not on the level of Crysencio, but I think it's above Manor Solomon's level. I'd like to see Manor Solomon in the number 10 as well. I think there's definitely an ability from Daniel Farke, or the option, I should say, to move Manor Solomon into the number 10. But I think it was abundantly obvious today that Aronson didn't work in the 10. I'm seeing 7/8 out of 10 today for Brendan Aronson. I can't believe it. You know, he touched the ball about, I think it was 27 times in that first half, and he's been given an 8 out of 10. And in that second half, I think he played a nice through ball. Was it Nonto in that first half? And I don't think Brendan Aronson was particularly bad today. But what I will say is he's not a number 10. He's not a number 10. He's just not. He doesn't have the guile. I mentioned this, the innovation, the vision, the connectivity on the ball. You know, the follow through on the ball. I don't think he's got a great shot on him, to be honest with you. And I think the vision, just in general, although he played Nonto with a nice ball, I don't think he can do that consistently. And he struggled to pick up the pockets and beyond that half turn, you know, in a sort of natural fashion there. So I think you've got to have William Nonto. You've got to have your best player in that central space. Manor Solomon could definitely dictate in that central space. But all of these decisions that we're talking about, all of these things of which seem quite obvious, you've then got to look at the manager. You've then got to look at some structural changes which didn't happen. Matteo Joseph missed that first chance. William Nonto missed that second chance. But overall, a manager then has to dictate the rest of the game. These were early on. These were early on chances. These weren't chances which were, you know, abundantly, you know, towards the back end of the game and we were close. Leeds barely did anything for around about 60 minutes. We didn't do anything. And the manager continued to let that flow. And the problem with Leeds fans, including myself, is we've seen it before. And I'm not going to come on here and ranting and raving and all this sort of stuff. Earlier on, I was upset. I felt I gave quite a big tactical dive into the game to say I'd just come from the watch along. I feel like I had stuff noted in my head, and I definitely encourage you guys to go and have a look at that. And I'm not going to touch on too many of those points, but there was strategical things and there was framework issues of which the manager got completely wrong. It was arguably his worst game in terms of managing a football match in Leeds' most important this season. And as I've said to you guys, we can look at Burnley, okay, as being the big test. I think Leeds' biggest test so far this season was Burnley. And I think we ultimately failed. West Bromwich Albion, Daniel Farke didn't go there to win. He said that. He ultimately said that. We didn't go there to win. We saw the isolation of Matteo Joseph, how far the midfield was away from the attack. We did not go there to win that game. We went there to preserve our back line and get out of there with a clean sheet after we got mauled by Borough. He had to get a clean sheet there after drawing and losing a lead to Portsmouth in the first game of the season, getting battered by Borough midweek, conceding 6 goals in those 2 games, and then going into West Bromwich Albion. We had to get a point. And then what did we do? We went and got 2 clean sheets and scored 4 goals accumulatively against Sheffield Wednesday and Hull City. Fantastic. But we have got to look at this right now. Now, I thought Sheffield Wednesday would be a little bit further up there this season. I think they might just edge up a little bit, but I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong about many things before. What I will say is when you look at the teams that we've faced so far, 3 of them are in the bottom 5. And I know the league is yet to take shape, obviously. Let's be logistical right now. But I do see Portsmouth has been maybe a little bit further down there. Sheffield Wednesday seem to have really nosedived. I don't know why that is. I know Danny Roll's a good manager, but I think maybe the personnel at that football club, when you're still putting Barry Bannon and Josh Windass and Palmer in your starting lineup, you've got a problem, a big problem. And we did mention that at the start of the season. How much can he really get out of that nucleus, which was still there in League One with Darren Moore? How much can he get out of that? And obviously, we've spoken about Hull City as well. Liam Palmer and Louis Coyle aside, he didn't see much. It's not the same Hull City as it was last season. So they seem to be relatively poor sides at this moment in time. West Bromwich Albion, we didn't go there to win the game. And today I thought he could have really put down a statement at Ellen Road, in my opinion. I thought we could have really seen a statement from Leeds United. Let's go out there. I predicted a 2-1 win. And, aside from the 2 chances that we had, I thought we looked very, very vulnerable on the counter-attack. I thought Greb struggled to tuck in when the fullbacks went forward. I actually thought the fullbacks were horrendous during the game. I thought it was probably Jayden Bogle's worst game in a Leeds United shirt. I think Firpo struggled a little bit. I think he was the better of the two, but I think he struggled a little bit. I think Rodon really struggled to get hold of Zian Fleming. Sometimes he was dropping deep. Sometimes he was going beyond and going between the centre-backs. We saw that with that Josh Laurent ball where Rodon got his bearings all wrong. And he was kind of lucky that Zian Fleming didn't have that extra burst of pace. But look, we can all see this. I thought it would be won and lost in the midfield today. I thought Hannibal was able to dictate the game by the referee. The referee had a shocker. We all know that, but he let Hannibal get away with multiple things. Brownhill, I thought, had a good combative game. But some of the decisions I just thought were absolutely staggering by Daniel Farke. When you were trying to preserve it only being 1-0. It only been 1-0, but at the same time have that midfield presence who was able to move forward and join the dots. Ampadu was doing it, and Ampadu was growing into the game. And a lot of people were talking of an injury, but I mentioned in the watch on, but he was carrying the ball. He was fizzing the ball in. He was asking for the ball. I don't think you do that if you're injured and you're moving around gingerly. Elijah Griff is a very different profile to Ethan Ampadu. He's much more limited, but he keeps Gruev on. And then he brings Rothwell on, okay. And then Tanaka with 5 minutes to go. Ramazani with 12 minutes to go. And you saw with Ramazani when he came on, it was an injection of pace of which we massively needed. But we can talk about how badly managed this game was. But it all comes back to the point of which, at the end, we saw this so many times, throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks. Relying on the X factor, the better players, of which we saw so many of the balls go through Manor Solomon today, and it wasn't working. Wasn't working. And it seemed to be the only reliance we had. There didn't seem to be any difference in playing. There didn't seem to be any early substitutions of which would have shocked Burnley, maybe put them at a different kilter, maybe given a different dynamic to the Leeds team. There was no tempo increase with anything. We all could see at half-time changes had to be made, and they weren't. We've seen this story before. He will wait and wait and wait and wait. And I worry when it comes to these low blocks, and this is what I've said about Daniel Farke throughout, the low blocks are the issue with this manager. We saw teams in the bottom six take points off Leeds with very, very simple game plans of just shoving 11 men behind the ball when Leeds United accumulatively had about 100 million quid's worth of talent on the pitch last season, but we couldn't break them down. This squad last season was more than good enough, and this season is more than good enough. This is a shite division, but you cannot underestimate it. We all know that. But I just wonder, with all the top bosses and the top brass there today, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder if they're thinking some of this is the same of which we've seen and it's molded into this season again. I wonder if they're looking at the 4 wins in 14. I wonder if they're looking at the fact that we've played 3 of the bottom 5 teams this season and still drop points in those games when we should be steamrolling all of them with the talent on the pitch. I wonder if they looked at this Burnley game today and said, that is not good enough. It's simply not good enough. And it's a reoccurring theme. But also, we know that this regime work on data, and it's 4 wins in 14 for Daniel Farke. My whole point here is not to shoehorn Farke out of the club. Nothing of the sort. But I am yet to be fully convinced as a football fan. And I'm getting the notion that a lot of you are not completely convinced yet by Daniel Farke. Okay? And that is not me saying I'm a hate mongering Leeds fan, but I'm just not fully convinced right now. And Emmett, I can see what you said there. Please list me the managers you'd have to replace with that. That's not my job, Emmett. It's simply not my job. You know, when Sunderland relieved, I think it was Dodd's duties when they went and got Regis Labrise, no one would have suggested Regis Labrise. No one. But he's had a pretty good start and he looks pretty decent. And the Sunderland fans are highly appreciative of him. I saw a Sunderland fan saying the other day on YouTube that it's the best football he's seen in 20 years. So, you know, there could be some ridiculous names out there, but I'm not saying, for one, that Daniel Farke has to go. But what I'm saying and what I said at the beginning of this season is things have to change in terms of some of this game management. Some of the same tendencies that we see against certain teams have to be improved by the manager. And that could be, strategy, framework, substitutions, personnel on certain sides of the pitch. That has to be developed. And as a football fan, can we not request that? Are we not allowed? Or do I have to criticize the manager and to ask for development? I have to have a remit of 6 managers that will be adequate enough to replace Farke with a good CV. I don't think that's fair. I think it's right to be able to look at the manager after a performance like today. And I want Daniel Farke in a game like today to be completely succeeding. Of course I do, and winning that game. And I'm fully backing him as the Leeds United manager. But I've said from the beginning of his tenure at Leeds United, we need to see developments from Norwich in press conferences, in how he articulates and taking responsibility, but of course on the pitch as well. And I do worry sometimes that we're just seeing a lot of the similar blueprints. Is it early? Of course it's early. But we also, I think, as a fan base, understand that this season has to be top 2. This has to be promotion. And it's really interesting to see what you guys are thinking on the other side. I'm just going to have a quick look at Graham's article here, because I think a lot of you guys, there's Graham. A lot of you guys were, because I think some of you may turn around and say, look, Connor, you're negative. I don't feel I'm giving off any negative vibe whatsoever. I think there's solution in the manager developing. I think there's solution in starting certain personnel. I think there's solution in what he has available to him. Ramazani. Play him. Play Ramazani. Know when to be less stubborn and change your mind a little bit. Rotate Gruev. So we have maybe, we don't always have to have 2 double pivots. We can have 1 double pivot because we're good enough to have 4 players going forward, essentially in midfield. We are good enough to do that. Tanaka is good enough to go forward predominantly, but also recover when it comes to defensive work. Rothwell is more than good enough to do that as well, but release the shackles a little bit. When Bogle and when Firpo go forward, we have to have midfield cover, especially against the good teams who are going to sit back and look to counter-attack. When Joel Peru comes on, there has to be a plan for Joel Peru, not to just throw him on. We have to have some sort of idea of where we're going to play him. Is it going to be a front 2? Is it just going to be as a shadow striker in and behind Matteo Joseph? What is the plan? Don't just throw him on. And we see him veering right and veering left. There's no plan there. There was no plan today whatsoever, and it felt desperate already. That's my worry with it. And it's not a cataclysmic plan, let's get rid of the manager, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's okay as a fan base to say, and even if you're the most positive fan ever when it comes to Daniel Farke, which is fair enough, hand on heart, can you say you are fully convinced right now? After, and obviously it includes the fantastic Norwich performance. It includes the brilliant win away at Middlesbrough. It includes Hull City and the feeling after that. Sheffield Wednesday and the dominance of that game. 100%. 90 points last season. Whee. But it also has to include, we have to discuss the Blackburn result. The end of last season. When it was a mirror image of what happened today against a lower par team, a low block side who were hitting us on the counter-attack. Okay? We have to discuss Sunderland, the 0-0 at the back end of last season when they were in a right state and we couldn't get past them and they were looking to hit us on the counter-attack and they were working in the low block, which worked for them. We have to discuss Southampton twice at the back end of last season who figured us out so simply. So there are positives and negatives to look at here, but I find the common denominator, this absolutely profound struggle of the manager to be able to break down a low block. That's my worry. Let's have a quick look anyway to what the Leeds fans were saying on Twitter anyway. Pretty damning here by Andrew Leonard. He will be gone by the end of October. He's not the only one to get us promoted with his team. There's no Somerville. Kershaw says, hope we don't get some luck in the coming games. We seem the only club that doesn't get home advantage on penalties. I'd agree with that. Encouraged by what? Obviously, Daniel Farke was calling this sort of performance encouraging. Encouraged by what? Possession. It's like watching reruns of previous losses. Okay, it's a bit far, but does he think he's okay, that's a bit That's a bit much. But I get the dominance pleases him. And yes, that is very good, like a team like Burnley. But like last season, we were unable to capitalise on it or make the kind of chances needed to disrupt their defensive setup and create better chances. Long way to go and step up quickly. Ask some real questions backed by stats and facts, such as record since the running last season. Ask him the percentage of ball between centre-backs proves control. Stats are lies without score lines in your favour. Yeah, so I think, and then obviously we've got our style of football is so boring when it's sideways and backwards. So it's all. This is why I wanted to do this video, everybody, because it feels like, even on my YouTube comments, I was having a look afterwards, and it feels very sort of questioned on Farke, and you should definitely be able to do that. And I wanted to just get a couple of your comments in the section below. The Smith Elvis says, thanks for your donation, buddy. The only leeway I'll give Farke is a lot of players have been away on international duty. Liverpool lost at home today under similar circumstances. Okay, fine. I don't know if I could be wrong here, but was Largy away for international duty, Smith Elvis? And I appreciate your comment there, mate. But was he away? I don't think he was. Was Bogle? I don't think he was. Strauch, Rothwell. I say no. Grove went away, didn't he? Solomon went away, of course. Aronson went away, of course. Peru didn't. Joseph did. I think Largy was the one that everyone was calling for the majority of the game. We know Tanaka had been away, of course, and I get that. I understand that, but there is still teams that we can call upon right now, and we can look at today, even in the Premier League, if you want to look at internationals in particular, but even at this level, who've had internationals go away and have still performed, And I understand with what he's saying there, but that is just the fact of life. Are we just going to come back after every international break and say, oh, well, there's going to be a lot of underperformances here, because we were talking about the squad being filled out in terms of depth. We're all talking about how good the bench was, And also on that point, mate, Gruev was playing centre-back at one point when you've got DeBayo on the bench. Who we evidently trust, Yeah, DeBayo's on the bench. Ampadu's in the side. The more complete midfielder, especially when you're trying to protect a lead, have a little bit of shape, but also get forward as well. And it sounds like I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and I understand what you mean, and you could be right. The problem is the Smith Elvis. We've seen these things happen before, which is my worry. Shout out to you, though, mate. Thank you. Should have gone after Wembley, says Arthur. Interesting. Keep getting your thoughts on. Ryan says, Gabe was on it. We need so many chances to score. The comments of a Stonewall pen and 2 missed sitters drives me up the wall. It's all we are relying on across 90 minutes. That's piss poor analysis. The tactics in play is non-existent. See, I think that's kind of where I come from. I think personally, from my standpoint, I think Nathan's bang on there, because we seem to focus on moments as a fan base, and I get football's based on moments. It's based on these X factor moments, and I know Farke talks on it all the time. I've not read his post-match press conference stuff, but presumably he was saying afterwards, if Joseph scores, it's a different game. If Willie scores, it's a different game as well. But I can't help getting beyond the fact that if that happens, change things then. If that happens, you can kind of see the way the game's planning out. You can see the fact Burnley are forcing us inside. They're compacting that midfield. They're keeping Jaden Anthony wide. They're keeping Koleosho wide. And Zian Fleming's just dropping deep there. And why is he dropping deep there? Because when they break, the ball gets to Fleming, bang, straight out there. And you have got a rapid Koleosho ready to go as well. And I thought Anthony played quite well for them today. But they had a strategy today. They had a plan. And by God, if Burnley are going to counter-attack on us, because they know Ellen Road is going to be the toughest place to come this season, as Liam was saying in the post-match, in the pre-match chat on my channel, if Burnley are going to do that, imagine what every other team is going to do at Ellen Road when they come and they try to do it. And if they can, if they're able to sit back, you're going to take lessons, as teams took lessons last season. That's my worry. But you do have to drive tactics. You do have to be pragmatic. You do have to make adjustments throughout a game. You cannot, for me, just focus on 2 moments. You can't do that, because football's a game of 90 minutes. And I completely understand that those moments change the game, but then you've got to adapt. You see the great managers adapting. You know, Thomas Wilson, who's a fantastic account on Twitter, shout out Thomas. He was saying, and I've followed Thomas for a long while now, and I think he's bang on. You can't compare it to Manchester City. Of course you cannot, bloody hell. But Manchester City struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled to break teams down. They really did. And then Pep was able to just twinge things, manipulate bits. And we're not comparing Leeds United to Man City and Pep Guardiola to Daniel Farke. Of course you're not. Not on the same planet. But just the good managers and the great managers, of course, when we're referring to Pep Guardiola, they're able to just manipulate things a little bit. I don't know what Daniel Farke, I don't know what his plan is when a team goes to a back 10. I don't know what we can do, because really, relative-wise, we should kind of be the Man City of this division. We're not, but we should be one of the big hitters. We've spent so much money relative and compared to all the other teams this season. We should be blowing them away, and we should be finding ways with the managerial prowess to get through these low blocks. We struggled last season to do it with the talent that we had on the pitch last season, invariably, especially towards the back 10 games of the season. I'm just a little bit worried at this point. And we saw Borough do it to an extent as well. Do you remember at the first point in the first sort of 10 to 15 minutes against Middlesbrough, when Leeds were the ones keeping the ball, having the pressure, moving up the pitch, trying to sort of pen Borough back, and then Borough just hit us. That's just my worry, I think. Oh dear, everyone. No good, people getting carried away because we win 1 or 2 games. Still not better than Sheffield or Burnley. DF is so clueless. More excuses. Luke says they beat us on a mistake by Solomon. Brighton dominated Ipswich, scoring nothing. It happens. It does happen, Luke. I think what the point is, Luke, is we're talking about, and I have to really clarify this. It's the manager's ability to break down a low block. It's the manager's ability to change things at the right moment. You see certain points when a manager knows how to change things. We all could see it as fans today. It had to change. And Solomon slipped, but this is what we're saying, Luke. You're focusing on a moment there, mate. And I understand it's the killer moment, but the manager's tactical brain inside a game could have won us that game with the personnel we had available on the pitch and on the bench. Bearing in mind, Burnley had, 7 players out? Was it 6 or 7 players out? We had a fully fit squad aside from Dan James in reality today. That should have been enough to cause them more problems than 3 shots on target at home with barely anything after the Nonto chance. Surely that's an expectation for Leeds United. The Bielsa effect, it'll never be that good again, I feel. I never see an opening game where Stoke get blown away as a Leeds fan. Yeah, I mean, it's not too negative like that, Lee. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying we won't bloody go up this season, everyone. I'm not saying that. I think I'm a little bit stuck with what I'm seeing at the minute when it comes to this similar game plan, which we're going to see this season from teams who, why the hell would they come out against us? Why would they do that? And yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today, really. Bielsa was a different kettle of fish. There was underlaps, there was overlaps, there was players coming off in the 35th minute if tactically he didn't feel it was good enough. There was a ridiculous level of insight when it came to Bielsa with such a budget team in 18-19 in particular, and what he was able to do with that in terms of these tactical insights, of course, but we don't want to go back there. But you are right, fundamentally, Lee, in what you're saying. But yeah, guys, I was just interested to hear what you thought on this. And obviously, we're going to be back tomorrow with the 3 things that we've learned overall. Lee says, agree with you, Connor, regards to subs, 100% needed. 2, 3 maybe changes at half-time. We cannot end a game with so many players playing out of position. It's criminal. P.S. Bogle, awful. Elmi says, Solomon, one of the players should have been replaced together with Aronson. Steve says, Hamface will park the bus. In sport, you do what the opposition do not want you to do. It's exactly what Burnley did away. Tanaka and Ramazani should be starting. I do agree with you I do agree with you there, Rich. And yeah, we'll wait and see what happens anyway. But guys, if you've enjoyed this, slap a like on the video. Don't get too abusive in the comment section as well. It's genuinely just a bit of a forum, this. I just wanted to get your thoughts. We're having a little bit of a debate on my group chat, and I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to bring this to all my pals on One Leeds, and let me know what you think in the comment section. But please, before you leave the video, please like it. Really appreciate all of your support. We're going to be back with the 3 things we learned tomorrow, which is going to be another interactive video where you guys can tell me your 3 things. We've also got an article now on www.oneleeds.com if you want to check out a little bit of written content. And yeah, guys, thank you so much. We are sponsored by ipmgroup.com over here. You can check a little bit of a giveaway on the Patreon as well. It's going to be released by Sunday. The lucky winner who gets a free bit of merch from our store. You can check that out in the link in the description below as well. I've got some cool sponsorship links coming next week as well. But guys, from Connor at One Leeds, it's been an absolute pleasure. As I say, keep it respectful and as happy as you can do in the comment section below. And let's hope it turns around, But I'm really fascinated to hear your thoughts, and I'll read every single one. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you in a bit. Cheers.